Hello and welcome to the Toffee Blues. Apologies for the wait. I've been having some technical issues, so apologies for that and the sort of technical mishaps that have been going on. My laptop doesn't seem to want to have ran the stuff today, so that's brilliant. This is our pre-match preview. We've got Alex joining us as well. I think he'll be joining us now. You're right, Alex, mate?
Hi, mate. You're right.
Yeah, not too bad. So obviously, this is the pre-match preview for the Chelsea-Everton game. First of all, give us your thoughts. How you feeling before the big game?
Not confident, I'll be honest. Obviously, the news this week with like further injuries on top of the run of form we're in. It doesn't bode well. Let's be honest. I mean, I have no idea what team's going to be going to Chelsea tomorrow, but you'd think even full strength we'd struggle to get anything at Stamford Bridge. So yeah, it's not looking good.
No, and I've heard already that Lukaku's out of sorts and all of that. But you just know if he's fit and he's playing, he's gonna bag at least a couple against us.
Oh yeah, definitely. It'll be the typical Everton where we've already had Josh King this season, Lukaku, player of like his quality and that against the type of defence that will be going to Stamford Bridge. Yeah, he could have a field day if they get it right.
Yeah, and they probably will. Tuchel's a very astute manager. And he must look at us and think, God, what an easy game to come running up to. Like you said, that we have got a couple of injuries. I think it's Townsend, Coleman, Richarlison, and now added on Luca Dean's apparently ill. It's just a mess, this injury problem we've got at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you have no idea what to make of everything. I mean, the Richarlison thing coming out, people were sceptical at first when Benitez said about it after he was brought off at Palace, but obviously, there does seem to be a bit more weight to that now, based on what Richarlison said today as well. But I mean, Digne being ill, you take that with a pinch of salt at the moment with what's going on. But there's no doubt that there's too many players getting injured at the moment, and like we had the head physio Danny Donachie. He was sacked, but it doesn't seem to have changed the issue. It seems to be a deeper issue than just one person. So yeah, it's definitely something we need to sort.
Yeah. Apparently, even his dismissal was rumored to be something about people not getting on and all that sort of stuff. But the problem was a lot deeper rooted anyway. And to be fair, even before this season, we've always struggled a little bit with injuries. But I don't know what he makes them do in training. He must make them absolutely hit each other or something, because I've never known it be this many straight after each other. So obviously that's one of the major issues. I mean, the other major issue is that they're in key areas as well. Two wingers out. That means that it's probably going to be Gray and Gordon, or Gray and Iwobi. Our right back's out, so John Joe Kenny will have to come in the fold. And the left back not playing means another Godfrey's going to be there, and probably Mason Holgate's going to play at centre back, I'd assume. It just seems all a bit miss and match, fill the pieces.
Oh yeah, the defence in particular, you think is so threadbare now. If one more injury out of that, and you're talking about the likes of like Brandpoint having to come in, who's almost certainly not ready for it and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very concerning, and you have to think as well. You wonder where any sort of goals are going to come from. With Richarlison and Townsend out now, it's only really Gray who seems capable of getting a goal at the moment. I mean, unless Rondon can somehow step up. But I mean, I know he got a goal at Palace. It wasn't any real quality in it or anything like that. It still wasn't. There's still not much to show that he's anywhere near what we're going to need. So yeah, scoring goals is, I think, is going to get even more difficult now with these players out.
Yeah, and I think I saw a stat before about our attacking movement on Twitter, and it didn't highlighted that is a major problem, as well as the fact we're letting in goals left, right, and centre. We are just not creating enough chances and not getting the ball far enough up the field to have players score goals. Damari Gray got one against Arsenal. They could have had two, but they were pop shots from outside the area, which he hit well, but I wouldn't call them great attacking movement from attacking coaches type-esque. It's more one player's individual brilliance type of thing.
Yeah, definitely that. And I mean, like you think about Palace as well, that was kind of just a goal we almost just kind of forced over the line pretty much. Definitely like, no like intelligent attacking player or anything like that. Yeah, I think chance creation, there's still no real playmakers in the squad, I don't think. I mean, you've got Townsend who can whip a good ball in, I guess. But there's no players like, the likes of Rodriguez and even Sigurdsson, like if you want to say as well, like some player could like create a chance out of nothing. Obviously, Digne as well was a bit of an option. He hasn't been at it as much this season because of the more defensive role he's been asked to play anyway, and he's not in the squad now at all. So yeah, chance creation and even just having the players to finish off any like we don't really have a player who can feed off scraps at the moment either. So
No, and I agree. I think Rondon's goal. I mean, Inky's put it here that Rondon played pretty well when he came on, and his goal against Palace was the most Rondon-esque thing ever. It was sort of like he'd held a couple of defenders off, got a bit lucky that it came back to him at the bottom, at the back post. It was the most. If you said to me, describe what you think a Rondon goal would look like, it'd be something along the lines of that. Just happens to be there at the right time, and using that weight that he's been chucking around to his advantage, which is a little bit better than him just knocking people off halfway down the field and giving away silly free kicks. But I do agree with you. It was more of a scrappy goal than something built like out of just nice build-up play. Obviously, I think I'll ask you for your score prediction now, and then we can get into the juiciest stuff because I see the chat have mentioned a couple of stuff that's broken out today as well. But what do you think the score prediction will be?
I mean, like I said, I think it's very unlikely we'll score. So I'll probably go maybe just 2 or 3-0. I think I can't. Chelsea aren't quite as have a team. Like I don't think it'll be quite like City Leeds the other day, but I think clinical. They'll be maybe a bit cautious with like going all out at us. But yeah, still like a 2 or 3 like comfortable win for Chelsea.
Yeah, I've got like 3-0 going down as well. I just as much as they get defensive plaudits. I think there's going to be enough. They'll have enough chances against us to put a couple away. And if Lukaku is back and finds the form, it's going to be a really grim viewing for us. I mean, Inky's already put 4-0 there, so I think it's fair to say most of the fan base is expecting, a loss and a loss by a couple of shots. If he loses, do you think this is his last chance saloon? I personally thought he'd have been gone after Palace. Do you think this puts him in there?
Yeah, I mean, do you think a result like Palace, it would be the last straw more than like Chelsea? And obviously now, of course, he's got all these injuries, these further injuries to fall back on as well. It's like, oh well, we would have done better at Chelsea if like Charlton, Townsend, Coleman weren't out. So I can't see Chelsea being the game for it. I don't know if it'll be. I don't know. It depends. Like I mean, we can't just keep losing. I just keep waiting for something to change. So I mean, I know we got a bit of a lucky break against Arsenal last week, but there's no signs of improvement, and Palace is about as bad as it's got. So I don't think Chelsea will be it, but there's surely only so many more defeats that can happen in a row before something changes.
Yeah, I agree. I think if Arsenal had showed up like they, and played like a team that were 10 unbeaten when we played them, and they beat us, I think he probably would have been gone by the Palace result. But I think that's gave him a couple more weeks. Irwin's already put it there. Benitez said today Moshiri's backing him. He did obviously do his presser today. Same sort of drivel. He started with Moshiri backing him, which I don't know. I think it's a bit of an ego thing because he was a Moshiri appointment and he doesn't want to look, 3 months into the season like he's had a stinker. But we also got some other stuff about we're in the right direction moving forward, which 2 wins in 2 months. I'm not too sure what the direction is for him, unless he does want the championship next season. Some of it. What did you make of his comments today? Because sometimes I think he sort of Well, I don't know where his head's at when he makes a comment sometimes.
Well, it's confusing, isn't it? Because I mean, I think he must just realize that he's lost almost all of the fan base now. I mean, there was a large portion that even before we'd even kicked the ball were going to be against him, just because of his past. But the results now and just no signs of change at all. It's just going to get worse with each defeat, and I mean, saying things like that are just gonna antagonize fans even more, and like even the few that are like sticking by him and just hoping he'll pull us out of it are gonna run out of patience quicker with stuff like that. It's a bizarre statement to make because there's just no way of being able to argue in favour of that. It just isn't. We're getting worse, not better. So yeah, bizarre thing to say.
Yeah, it was a bit like when he's always on about running and knows the City after a loss. It's sort of like irrelevant when our form's this bad. Um, I will I will say this when I was listening to it and stuff. And that ink he's put there, I don't think we'll be relegated. I personally don't think we will, but I think we'll be. I think we've got to be careful not to get sucked right down the table. Just because I think we'll lose key players if we have a season of bad performance like that. Um, are you along the same lines, or do you think there is a risk that we could end up being in that relegation scrap?
I think the games like the Arsenal match show that every so often we will just get a win. Like we'll get enough wins to get us over the line. I mean, we're buoyed by the fact that we had such a good start to the season as well, of course, which has already given us a bit of a cushion. Uh, and you think that these players have got to come back eventually, and like if we just get a bit of a lucky spell where most of our key players are fit, then we should have enough to get enough results to get us over the line. But it's still just crazy that this is the actual concern at this point in the season that the players we have, the money do spend over the years, and we're just getting worse like year on year now, and relegation is still a worry at this point in the season. So, but yeah, we should have enough to stay up. More to do with the quality of the other teams in the league more than anything as a reflection on us.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We are in a league where the likes of Norwich, although they're doing quite well off the new manager bounce, they're still, I still think they don't look a Premier League side. And then obviously we've got Newcastle as well. Again, they're shown a little bit of a new manager bounce, but I don't think they're good enough to be in the Premier League anymore. So I think we are sort of protected by that extra bit that there are teams that are a lot worse than us, in a lot more, in a lot parallel positions than us. So I think we'll be okay. I mean, that could just be, blind confidence talking. The biggest worry for me isn't going down. It's players leaving, whether that be because he's upset them or they're just tired of mediocrity. 3 seasons in, I'm thinking the likes of Richarlison, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, young players who've got big aspirations. They want to play in the Champions League. If we're finishing, 16th, 15th, 14th, that's not missing out like last year where we could have got Europe if we'd carried on towards the end of the season. That's miles off that European slot sort of territory. Is that one of do you think that's a fair worry to have for many fans to have the mass exodia that could happen at the end of the season?
I mean, yeah, I mean, you can't, no one could blame players like Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin for wanting to leave, like, because they're players of a much higher quality than where they're at the moment. Um, Digne, I could see leaving in January just because of everything that's like happened the last few weeks. He seems like the bond between him and Benitez just seems completely gone, and Benitez has shown before that he can be quite ruthless with that. And I think that a lot of teams will be in the market for a player in his position of his quality. Um, I mean that like the hope is that we could get a good fee for Digne and hopefully bring in players that make us a bit better and like improve depth. But you don't know how much you trust the club is spending at the moment, so it's it's not as easy as all that. I think I say I don't think we like doing business much in January. So I mean, unless a really good offer comes in for someone like Richarlison or Calvert-Lewin, I think they'll at least see the season out. But yeah, if things don't improve this season, this summer could there could be a lot of players leaving definitely.
Yeah, I mean, the worrying one about the Digne one is I don't know if you saw it, but the Athletic were running, sort of like feature on what it was like to be a Benitez player, and it's the Alonso one where his wife's going into labour and he ends up going on a cut, on a really cut price because he wanted to spend time with his wife and be there for the child's birth. Stories like that highlight that we could end up letting Luca Dean go for some really silly prices here if it suits the narrative and the agenda of the manager, which I think will only anger fans and will be a very short solution. Especially if he does get sacked next season, we get another manager and he goes, "I'd have really liked the left back you had before." That really doesn't fill me with much confidence reading that article from the Athletic this morning.
Yeah, definitely not. And obviously with Brands going as well now, and like the board seeming to choose Benitez over Brands and like choosing to back Benitez, that it does seem like a lot more will be in his control now. I mean, it's unclear to see whether we're going to appoint a new director of football. Apparently, Mashiri's still quite keen on the model, so we might be getting someone in next few days or whatever. I'm not sure, but I haven't seen any rumours or anything like that. So at the moment, you've just got to assume that a lot of this is on Benitez now. So that's what I mean. If he wants to sell a player, that's up to him. And yeah, like you say, teams will be able to take the mickey a bit. And if Benitez wants to get rid of him that badly, then yeah, we could be getting a fee for Digne that is a lot below his value to us.
Yeah, and that would be a major concern. Obviously, I'm surprised Mashiri wants to stick with the director of football model when it's clearly proven that he's not very good at working with one. But yeah, I have heard that as well. I feel like we're probably not going to get an outright director of football. I feel like it'll be somebody either promoted within or one of his friends type thing. I don't think it'll be that we'll go out and get an established one. I think we're going to end up. I've got this vision that it's going to be David Unsworth. There were rumours that Tim Cahill was going to get it at one point as well, which again boggles me. As much as I like him, he's my favourite player growing up. He's not a director of football.
Yeah.
That worries me a bit. Like the fact that David Unsworth could get it when he's been head of youth development, and we've had Tom Davis and Anthony Gordon are the only two that appear regularly out the academy. So that kind of makes me worry as well.
Well, obviously, there's a lot to a director of football role, and it seemed with Brands, someone who was like an expert in the field that we were meant to be handing over the reins of control to him very much and letting him transform the club. And obviously, it didn't work out like that. And like you say, that seemed a lot to do with Mashiri wanting to do a lot of the stuff himself when he doesn't really have the expertise in it. So yeah, it seems unlikely that like you said, that he'd bring someone else in of that experience and just more, someone that a name that like can appease the fans but doesn't actually have that much responsibility, and it's still just some sort of puppet role, and it's still just Mashiri doing what he wants.
Yeah, which is so dangerous to do, especially. I think I saw someone tweet the other day like the billionaires that are obviously successful people in some field because that's how you make your money unless you inherit it. And someone said the other day, I can't imagine it's very easy to convince a billionaire who's an expert in one thing and made a success to convince them that they're not an expert in everything and to let someone else have a go. Which was a fair. I read it and thought, that's probably a fair point. You've got to be pretty successful to be a billionaire, and giving the reins to somebody else, I imagine, damages the ego just that little bit. Reading a couple of the comments here, though, filtering through the ones that are, on about how poor our season is. Neil's problem is I don't see is that we seem to be in a decline. I don't have any confidence. When Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison leave, we'll replace them with worse players, cementing the decline, and that real danger is on the oncoming years. That's one that I think is a worry. I don't think we'll go down this season, but I feel like if we continue with the trajectory of how we are going, I feel like we will start slipping back to 14th place finished team. And then if we're not careful and we don't improve ourselves season on season, could start dropping further because the Premier League only gets better year on year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the model of like I think of teams like Aston Villa about 10 years ago, and how they started like the decade, challenging like the top four, top like and like were regularly like going in the top six under Martin O'Neill, and then they slowly declined, and within about 6 years they put in one of the worst like Premier League campaigns in history and finished bottom and spent like 3 or 4 years or whatever it was in the Championship, and like it's a horrible thought to have, but if like we just don't seem to be showing any signs of like improvement at the moment, and like we just seem to be getting worse every year, and like uh the people in charge just aren't doing it for us at the moment, and like you say, it's a lot about you've got to replace your key players once they leave. You've got to replace them in the right way. And if we don't do that and don't recognise that problem in time, then yeah, it's plausible that it could get very bad for us.
Yeah, it's something that even if we get a lucky escape this season or next season, it's something if we're not careful will be creeping up on us very quickly. I've seen here as well. Edwards made a great point here that you can't blame every manager. It's the team have seen off a couple of managers in their time, which I agree with to an extent. But I think this is the way we set up is pretty. I think you can blame the manager for this as well as the players. But I do admit there are a couple of players that I don't think Everton fans are by any means don't know this, but there are a couple of players that should probably move on and have seen through enough managers.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite patient with Benitez for a while because you had to recognise that we're missing a lot of key players at parts in the season, and he's got off to a really good start with quite limited resources after having no money to spend this summer. Um, but I think the turning point for me has been all this Digne stuff, and I think like picking fights with some of our most key players who have. I mean, I love Digne, and like he's never shown anything to me that shows he doesn't care or anything like that. I don't think that's the right way to go about it, and it's not the sort of person that I'd want in charge of the club I support. So that's been the turning point for me, I think. And obviously, you don't know which bits are true. Obviously, Digne reported ill today. If that's true, uh, if that's actually how it was, it doesn't come across great from him. I admit, but there's all sorts of things today. Like that might be hiding what the real truth is. It could be something to do with Benitez. It could be COVID. It could be anything like that. I think there's all sorts of things. Everything's not as clear as it seems. I don't think coming out of the club.
Which is a massive problem and something that fans have been quite upset about for a while. And communication, and we're watching from the outside in, and it looks like a circus from the outside looking in. And with the lack of communication, we can only assume the worst. There were rumours the other day that we'd sacked Duncan Ferguson, pure rumours, and none of it was true. But it was believable and believed by quite a lot of people because at this point, I don't think there's many rumours that people don't go that aren't not believable because of the state that we're currently in.
Yeah, there's very few things you could say that like would genuinely shock me now, like because it is just the stuff that's come out the last few weeks. I mean, I think the stuff with Sigurdsson this summer kind of set the precedent, really, didn't it? Like that started off as somewhat of a rumor on Twitter, and it turned out it was actually true. So yeah, that sort of stuff like feeds feeds the fuel into things like this. And yeah, it was completely plausible that Ferguson might have walked or whatever, or might have been gotten rid of or something like that. Because yeah, that's just kind of what's been happening in the last few weeks, and it's definitely not been a positive time the last few weeks. Far from it.
No, I agree. It's interesting though that you mentioned about Benitez. I mean, personally, and people will know this because I was, I didn't hide in the summer that I didn't want him or like him, and I've not hid since that I don't want or like him. But we ran a poll today on the Twitter, obviously asking, are people still in support of the Everton manager? And there's still 18 hours to go. So, I mean, it could change. But 3,217 have voted so far, 88% saying no. Like I said, it's still open, so it could change, but it's very if it does change, I can't see it going to a yes. I think it's only going to go further into the no. And there were rumours, the Palace, after the Palace game, the away fans were, quite angry. The atmosphere in Goodison apparently has been, on the turn to quite, the next gear of toxic. It's getting a bit bleak for him. Because obviously once the fans, and players lose, have lost. Once you've lost those two things, your job becomes a tightrope. Is there a way you can win the fans back?
I think it genuinely is gone at this point. I don't think there's anything that could win over a majority. You turn results around and you'll win back a few. But as I said before, there was such a massive portion against him from the off that it was always going to be such a much more difficult job than it would be for a different manager. Um, I just don't think there's any way back from this now, because it's not just results at this point now. Like I said, this like antagonising players, the fact that Bashiri's chosen him over Brandt, which a lot of people disagreed with, which obviously that's not Benitez's fault, I guess, but it's still a factor, and it's just not showing. There's no signs that things are going to improve and get better. Arsenal looked like it could have been the start of something, and then we go to Palace and we're awful again. So you can't like that. It proved to be a false dawn. So yeah, I think the logical thing would be to get rid of him. I understand why Moshiri doesn't want to do that, but yeah, I don't really think, for the fans' perspective, there's any way back for Benitez.
No, I have to agree. I think obviously at the time myself included, who wasn't happy that he was ever appointed. We tried to get behind him for the sake of the team and the bigger picture. Obviously, and sort of there's the silly people that stuck the banners outside his house, which was totally uncalled for, sort of had an opposite effect to what they were hoping for. I think that actually swayed a couple more people on his side because it was just such an uncalled for act. So, and like you said, and we had such a good start, the Southampton game, it was a great start to have. But then it sort of derailed very quickly, which I think we all knew would happen. This was one of the reasons I was so against him. He was only ever going to be, one bad run of form away from losing the fans. It just turns out this bad run of form is 2 wins in 2 months, which is abysmal form. But yeah, this was obvious, surely.
Yeah, it was like we've said about it before. It was just such a gamble. Like things had to go really well for a long time. Like like I said, as soon as you get 1 or 2 defeats, like a lot of people will start jumping on his back a lot quicker than they would have done if it was just a manager with no like past history with us. But I don't think anyone expected it to be this bad. And this is like this type of form is like breaking records for us now. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I know like I think we lost 4 league games in a row at one point, which is the first time we've done that in a while. And like I say, 2 wins in 2 months gets pretty much any other manager sacked. Just in the way the world, like the football world is nowadays. Which just makes it more and more like mind-boggling because of all the other factors as well that he is still here. Yeah, it's just a crazy one, to be honest. Like I say, you could have predicted it a mile off, and yeah, the gamble hasn't paid off.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the irony that obviously he's come out Moshiri and gone. We can't keep sacking managers. And for him to tell the fans that when the fans have been saying this for the last 5-6 years, and then he's finally starting to take this voice note of the fans, say it again and dig his heels in over Benitez is. I mean, not saying that we haven't had some stinker managers that needed to go at the right time, but this is the fella he's going to really push, and push for in that type of attitude. It just boggles my mind. I think Inky might have got the stat there for you though. It was the first one of them anyway. It was the first time we've lost to Palace since 1994 at Selhurst, and I think it's the heaviest derby defeat we've had at home or something like that. Was another one. I tell you what it does do, and you know it's a bit hard, it's a bit horrible to do this because it makes you, you know, hindsight and stuff. It makes you realise how good Ancelotti did last season to get the points he did. You know, I know people will say the football wasn't always the prettiest of football, but to get the points he did last year with pretty much the same squad, bar Townsend, Gray, and Rondon, it's pretty much the same squad. So he was doing it without Damari Gray, who's been our shining light.
Yeah, it was very pragmatic last year, definitely. You've got to say as well. I do understand that like with all the, you know, the controversy, the flight, and like the opposition it was getting from fans, and it was being rumored Benitez was going to come in. Mashiri must have had like a lot of reason to believe to go with it anyway, based on what he believed was Benitez's managerial pedigree, and that'll be the reasons he's sticking with him now. In that, you know, we didn't have, like, we knew we weren't going to have to spend as much the next few years, and obviously, you know, you've got to keep everything secure and stable going into the new ground. And so that is probably one of the main reasons, or like probably the main reason, if like out of very few, that he is still sticking with him. But you could argue that things are like unstable at the moment. Like we're talking about at the moment, like, yeah, we probably won't get relegated, but we genuinely could. You know, the form we're in at the moment, if it doesn't pick up, there's no getting away from it. We are miles bottom of all the form tables at the moment. So, and if more players are like just going to down tools on him, which does seem to be happening a little bit at the moment, it's starting to creep in. You look at Alan as well, who didn't play on Sunday, but is apparently playing tomorrow. We'll have to wait and see. It is far from stable at the moment, which was, yeah, one of the biggest reasons for bringing him in. You'd think he'd be pragmatic enough, like Ancelotti was, to get enough points this season to get us to a relatively decent position with the limited resources we have, but it's not happening at the moment.
No, and I mean we'll get on to you know, saying off we did, or because you mentioned a good point. You know, there was obviously a reason for it, and I do believe one of the reasons was just best of a bad bunch in the nicest way. And we'll get on a bit more to that because obviously, if we were to sack him, I think he still might be one of the best of a bad bunch. Before we do that, we've got Rob from Belfast saying he's not watching the games until Rafa's gone. Sick of constantly playing Rondon, the bad subs, and Sims might not be good enough to give him a game, which links in with what Matty Elbin said here. He said he'd play the kids against Chelsea. He'd played Branthwaite, Onyango, and Sims. Firstly, Rob is not the only fan that I've heard say that. I actually said to my dad the other day, I was like, you know, it's a good job I do the stuff on the channel because there are some times where I just think I might just not watch the game. I've never been that engaged with them. But the youth thing, I personally don't think he'll be doing that. Not just against Chelsea, just at all. I think he's had times already where he could have played the kids, maybe should have played the kids, and he's not. And he's come out and said, you know, he trusts experienced players. Yeah, I can't see him playing the kids this season very much unless, you know, injuries really do back him into that corner.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think he will. And I mean, there are good arguments for why you don't do that. I mean, I know it's an easy solution. I know fans get frustrated with players that are on the pitch and they just want to see someone else giving a go, just anybody. But you know, I think still at the moment, you know, if Benitez is there for the long run, he's got to just try and win back the players as well as the fans. And I think you know, pit playing youngsters over like the experienced players who are meant to be like our best players is not the showing of faith, like, you know, for such a big game as well, like, away at Chelsea. It's just gonna oppose players more, and that's what I mean. I think you've got there was a lot of togetherness, I thought, in that Arsenal game. and that's the type of spirit we need to be captured. Like, it is there, it is doable, and with Goodison helping out and like getting behind the team, it can every now and then be done. And we said about it earlier, we just need to make sure we get enough wins to make sure we like get far away from the relegation zone, even if we're not going to challenge for anything this season. But that's that stability we need. And so, yeah, I understand the reason for not just throwing in youngsters just because players are underperforming. I think it's a bit more of a complex issue than that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. To be honest, I sometimes I get it, but there have been times where we see a youngster come on and it doesn't work out as well. Matthew Pennington rings a bell for the Derby game. He made his debut on, and I get it. There are times when you can probably play the youth. I don't think Chelsea's it. I think, to be completely honest, even though we're all on the assumption that we're going to lose, he can't afford to do that because your manager can't be looking at a game going, we're going to get battered in that sort of, let's put the kids out. He's got to go into it trying to win every game. Otherwise, he doesn't belong at the club. So I don't think he will do that. I think he'll try and put his best 11 out. Tuesday, Delaney's put that they don't understand why Everton got rid of Josh King. I think that, to be fair, I wouldn't read too much into it. I still don't think he'd have been good now, better than Rondon, I think, but apparently he wasn't happy with the game time he was getting at the club. And I don't think he's a Benitez type of player. Even if he'd signed a 2-year deal, I don't see him getting game time here.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's a great thing, isn't it? I mean, I know he didn't play much, but he showed absolutely nothing when he did come on. And it would have just been a case of, I like I say, like, he might have been a bit better than Rondon, but there wouldn't have been much in it. And Rondon is more Benitez type of player. You can't really argue that. So, yeah, in hindsight, it might have been like a more wise thing to do. But and like you say, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, I know Ancelotti wasn't keen on King at all, and so King would have felt pretty devalued during his time here. And going to a team like Watford instead made a lot more sense to him, I guess. So, yeah, I don't think there's a lot to really read out of that.
No, I actually quite liked the deal at the time, the 6-month deal. I thought it was, for us, was very clever thinking. So we're not lumbered with someone for years. Obviously, we spoke about Benitez and whatever happens with him. The bigger one that we got onto is, like I said before, I think we hired him because he's best of the rest. He's got a couple of trophies in the cabinet, which I think has, helped Moshiri make his decision as well. Say now, we sack him, Friday. I still, not that he is the best of the rest, but there is still a very bleak amount of unemployed managers. And some of the managers that we would try and grab, I think, would look at us and be a bit hesitant to leave their clubs for us. It's still a pretty bleak situation, isn't it? Like, sacking him would leave us in a tough spot again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that might also be a factor in it as well. Like, I mean, like I say, Moshiri does seem to finally realise that you can't just sack managers when you want and just get someone in and rinse and repeat, because it doesn't solve anything. And he might be a bit more astute and realising now that if he sacks him, he got lucky when he sacked Silva a few years ago and Ancelotti suddenly became available, and he somehow managed to convince him to come in. We won't do that again. Like, if Benitez does go tomorrow, like that's not gonna something a managerial replacement of that caliber won't happen again. I'd probably give it Ferguson for the rest of the season, if I'm honest. If it was my decision, I genuinely think that's the best option we've got at the moment, which is crazy to think, but it links back to what I keep saying about this his cohesion. I mean, Ferguson's, I know, is really liked by a lot of the players. You think of like your Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison. They both spoke about how much he's improved their game and stuff like that. I just think it would hopefully bring that togetherness in that like the fans would really get behind Ferguson as well. I think it's the best option we've got, to be honest. I mean, like we said about the poll, Benitez, pretty much everyone's agreed has got to go. Someone's got to come in. And I honestly think that's our best bet. Looking in the summer when hopefully there'll be better options available.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the latest odds now as of today, um, and I mean, this has got like the top 20, and I'm not going to read out the top 20. I mean, I'll mention a couple of valuable names. You've got Unsworth at 22-1, with Gallardo at 25-1, and Baines at 33-1. But there's a couple in the top. We'll go top 5, 6. We'll go top 10. Starting it off is as the odds-on favourite is the Danish manager, who apparently the club were putting out the feelers for the other day to learn a little bit more about him. I mean, I'm just putting it out there now. If you need to ask people what a manager's like, you shouldn't be hiring them.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. It's just crazy. Like I say, we've said about it before. I don't know anywhere near enough about him to comment myself. And like you say, by the sounds of it, the club doesn't either. So it's too much of a gamble. I have no idea what the players would react to him. So yeah, wouldn't be the wisest appointment.
No, I agree, mate. And the next one, the next one was heavily linked. I could see this happening. I think I called this with Cal the other day. Is Nuno, who was obviously at one point poised for the job in the summer, but wanted to bring in an entourage supposedly, which would has upset Managerial and co. This one I could realistically see happening. I could probably see us doing this.
Like I say, it looks ridiculous if we do that because clearly shows that we were almost going to get him this summer and then decided against him in favour of Benitez, and then after a disastrous spell at Tottenham to then appoint him a few months later, yeah, it looks terrible for us. And yeah, I think Nuno likes to work, like you say, with like his own coaches, his own players. I'm not sure how well he'd do coming in the middle of the season with this group of players, limited resources, and few players that he could connect with. So it'd be another strange appointment, that one.
Well, after that, we've got and Irwin's put thoughts on it now, and we'll get to this now. Third with it's 5-1 is Wayne Rooney. Yeah, give me your thoughts on Wayne Rooney.
It would be absolutely bizarre. It would be crazy. I saw people talking about a Ferguson Rooney kind of partnership type thing for the rest of the season, something like that. It would be bonkers. It would scream Bill Kemp, right? For a start, if any sort of rumours that are going on today, if they have any sort of grounds that it'll be 100% Bill Kemp pushing it. A ridiculous risk again. I mean, you have to factor that I think fans would get behind it because of the past and stuff like that. And I mean that's why clubs make appointments like this, former players with little experience, just because you have that have that kind of bounce at first, and it works the opposite way of the Benitez in that fans are a tiny bit more patient because of their playing career at the club and stuff like that. But yeah, it would be a very, very strange one. With very limited experience so far, Rooney. Not doing a terrible job at Derby, but Derby's not Everton.
No, and he has got a very bleak job there. And if he manages to keep them up, then that's fantastic for him. But like you say, he could come in. The wheels could fall right off the track. It could be a real swoop down. My thoughts on it are stay clear a little bit. We don't have to hire former players just because they've had managed one club for a little bit. Like you can let them go off and do their own thing and come back a little bit later. If Rooney loves the club as much as he says he is, he will always be an option until he's had the job. So it's not like it's a get Rooney now or you'll never get him situation. I don't think we have to react that rashly. I agree with you. I think there's a bit of Ken right in all of this, and the fans will get behind him because it's romantic. And Everton are so, as a fan base, as a club, we are a romantic, ideal club. We love a good coming home story. You got the Howard Kendall-esque sort of people always say that the last person to win his stuff was a former player type, stuff like that. We all love the idea, the romance of it. I will say this though, Rooney. Wouldn't call him a club legend, so it's not quite the romance that he's built. I'd say he's an Everton fan, and he's a good player and stuff. But I wouldn't call him an Everton legend just because he spent his better years at Manchester United. That's just that's my opinion. It's not quite the same as Duncan Ferguson, for example. I think the fans hold Duncan Ferguson in a high regard for the right reasons. But yeah, I can't see us going with Rooney. Matty's put here though, and he's on the list. He's 9-1. I would love this as well, but I can't see it happening unless Brighton do a mad one and just sack him. But it's Graham Potter, who for last year was getting a lot of, he plays too nice football. He's not defensive, but he's actually got a really good defensive record as well that goes sort of under the radar. Give me your thoughts on Potter. I've been an advocate for him for a while, but I just can't see it happening.
I think Potter could have been an option under Brands. Like, it was rumoured in the summer that Brands wanted him, and even then it would have been. I think it would have been a little more difficult to prize him away from Brighton. But now I definitely couldn't see it happening. I think it'd be a mad decision for him to do. To be honest, Brighton are in quite a good position at the moment. They're a team arguably on the up, whereas him on the down. And obviously we're a bigger name than Brighton. There's no getting away from that. But it's not as simple as that. And regardless, I think, like you say, Kenwright kind of goes for the romantic kind of thing, and Mashiri likes experience. And Potter doesn't fall into either of those categories. So I doubt he'd even be someone on our radar at the moment. Not to mention the fact, like you say, we'd actually have to pay quite a bit of money just to get him away from Brighton in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And I know the fans were booing him the other day, but I don't think the Brighton board are daft enough to do that. I think they know that they're onto a good thing there. I mean, moving down there, then you've got we've got Ferguson, who we spoke about, obviously. Lampard's in there. I wouldn't like Frank Lampard. I don't know if you'd like him. Obviously he did all right at Derby and Chelsea. And Ash has put it here that he'd rather have Lampard, which I assume is over Rooney. Would you have Lampard?
I agree. I'd probably just about take Lampard over Rooney, but again, cost a lot to get him. You could tell he demand very high wages, and it does seem a kind of Mashiri type appointment because it's a name and all that experience behind it as well, like playing wise. But he's definitely not shown enough in his managerial career so far that he'd be astute enough to steer us away from danger and start to rebuild. I mean, you could maybe argue that obviously he had that first season at Chelsea, where he wasn't even allowed to spend money because of the embargo. So you could maybe argue that he could maybe do well with limited resources. But I mean, that's describing a Chelsea side as limited resources, like just because they can't spend any money, which obviously is not really the case. It's still Chelsea still had considerably better players than we do at the moment. So yeah, it wouldn't be the worst shout, but yeah, it doesn't exactly fill you with confidence.
No, and I think that's a very fair point. Everyone, goes, oh, he plays the youth and all of this, and he did well at Chelsea under limited resources. But like you've just said, that Chelsea team is still an exceptionally good team, and is miles better than the current team we have put together. So I do think that sort of gets overlooked when we talk about Lampard. There are many more, but we'll do the last two because I think these are names that one's a massive name. It's a proper Mashiri name, and the other is a name that is linked with us pretty much nearly every time this job comes available. So we'll start with Lucien Favre. He was linked with us in the summer. I think he's been linked with us in the past when we've had the manager's job come available as well. He's a bit like a Ragnick. He's always been about. I was open to Favre in the summer. I'm still a little bit open to it, but not enough that. I mean, it's a bit like Lampard, really. With you, like, it wouldn't be the worst, but I'm not fully behind it.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, he'd come in with a very set style, probably quite a different style, and something that that would take a bit of time to adapt to. Um, and for that reason, I think he's probably more of a summer signing, as in get him in early in the summer, get pre-season trading completely like revamped and changed about, so that players can get used to a new style like before the season starts rather than right in the middle of one. So yeah, it'd be a risk. Not sure how open he'd be to come in here, but I think I say I think that's maybe more of a name uh, to look towards in the summer if he's still available. And I think we'd be more better off going with a bit more of a stopgap again at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I hear good things about him, but he's one of those. He's going to need a rebuild, and like you said, it'd be more of a summer type thing that would where you could, we'd have to back him financially because he'd probably want to overhaul some of their squad. And the next manager is massive, big name, would work with what we've got. I'm so on the fence about this because I actually really like him as a manager and think he's still like he's up there for one of the best managers ever. Um, and I will say this: I'm only on the fence because I think we'd have a good first season and a half, and then I think it'd be an absolute car crash beyond there. And it's Jose Mourinho.
Yeah, obviously, still in the job at Rome at the moment. So again, you've got a lot of severance packages. Mourinho would also demand an absolute fortune as well. I actually think he'd be quite open to coming in. To be honest, we're kind of a similar project to Spurs were at the time he took the job there. But oh, I mean, if you've got problems with Benitez and falling out of his players, then Mourinho is just that like times 10. So it screams Mashiri. I think if Mourinho was available at the moment, Mashiri would be all over it. But I couldn't see it happening, and I'm not sure Mourinho is the answer. I think it is quite similar. It's almost a sideways step from Benitez. Almost is. I think his like football ideas are a tiny bit outdated now, and he's one of them who's kind of struggled to adapt.
Yeah, I mean, like I think it's just the entertainment factor. He would be so entertaining, but it'd end in tears. It'd be such one of those where the good times would be good, but that you've got 3 seasons tops before it all absolutely burns around you, type thing. I've had this theory for years, and I'm talking like 2-3 years now, that he is what Managerial has wanted for a long time, and is always in a job when our job comes available. He has skirted his way out of this job an awful lot. Obviously, when before we got when we sacked Silva, he'd literally gone to Tottenham about a month before that, and Managerial was on about big name and all this, and I was like, oh, it's defo Mourinho, it's defo, and he'd gone to Tottenham, and I was like, maybe not. And then obviously the summer he was on his sabbatical at Talksport for about a week before accepting a job like that. And I just feel like every time our job comes available, we just miss him. And I think he's a nailed on in the same way, we've just said Rooney's got Kenwright all over it. He would have Managerial all over that. I think they probably look at those two managers with adoring eyes. Bill's looking at Rooney with, big love hearts, and Managerial's looking at Mourinho and Roma with the same big love heart eyes going on. So I'm surprised he's avoided the job for now. But if I was a betting man, I'd put a fiver on Jose Mourinho being Everton manager in the next 5 years at some point. It's one that's nailed on to happen.
That could even be another factor. And at the moment, I know things are starting to slide a little bit at Roma after such a great start. It might genuinely be a case of like he's kind of hoping that Roma pull the trigger and we can jump in and avoid paying that compensation. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's not out of the question with like the type of running that the club we've got at the moment. So it would be a very strange one. And yeah, people are saying about it here, like, I mean, all those outbursts you'd get in press conferences and stuff, and I'm not sure how much the fans would stand for that. I mean, it's such a great name at the start, and I mean, I think, like you say, it'd be very positive for a few months or so, maybe. But yeah, it would probably unravel quite quickly, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, looking at some of the comments now, and this is complete polar opposite to what we were saying, but Michael Green and Matty Elvin put about Potter, for example, saying, he's a humble man, he'd stick around. And he does strike me as that type of guy. He's not going to be constantly looking out, looking for the next big thing. He'd be pretty happy with us for a while. Michael Green's put that it's, one that most of, a large majority of fan base wants and would unify supporters a little bit more. Whereas, for instance, Mourinho would split the fan base as well. That would split it, right down the middle again. Um, so that'd be, the complete polar opposites in character as well and style. Matty's also said what you've said. He would ruffle feathers with fans and players more than Rafa. You know, for all the entertainment, imagine we lose. We're already on about Rafa Benitez's comments. Imagine Jose Mourinho commenting a bad slump of form. Imagine how much the fans go ballistic on Twitter if he's coming out and saying some real Mourinho-esque quote.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, like fans would just jump on him, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and we're on about egos, and Rafa gets called an egotist. As much as he is entertaining, but the fellow has got one of the biggest egos in football. And you hear about the way Luke Shaw type stories about him and Luke Shaw, and that story between those two makes Luca Dean and Benitez seem like best mates. So we just got to be a bit careful to avoid that. Matty said we need a manager that's going to stick around for the new stadium. I mean, I think that's what they think Benitez is going to be, because I don't think Benitez walks. I think realistically, Majiri fires him. I don't think he walks, unless something really big came along. But I don't think he's got a big job left in him now.
No, I think he recognised that this was kind of his last hurrah. He's been out in the wilderness in China for the last few years after Newcastle pulled the trigger on him, which I think he was maybe hoping that would be like quite a bit of a project going on there, and maybe he sees us as something similar now. But yeah, I mean, there's just no reason for Benitez to walk. Like you say, this is probably the best job he's going to get at any point. So yeah, that's what I mean. We said about it before about this. Like, he was just meant to be the stable name that would make sure nothing went too disastrously. But I think they maybe underestimated just how much fans would turn on him.
Yeah, and I think they've just underestimated just how unlucky we are in an aspect, because the injuries have been unfortunate, and I think they probably underestimated his influence. We're on about him falling out with people. This isn't the first time that news reports have been that he doesn't get on with people. Did it Chelsea? Did it Real Madrid? It's not a new thing for him to fall out. Did it Newcastle? He fell out with people. It's just short. I think the appointment's short-sightedness from the word go. But I do believe, as much as I don't want him to be, and a large majority of the fan base don't, I do believe he's probably going to be here for the next couple. I think we're going to give him till February, once the players are back, just to see if that is the case, if the injuries are the problem.
Yeah, I like I say, Chelsea won't be his last game, and I could see him pulling one or two results out the hat before New Year. I'm looking at that Burnley game on Boxing Day. I think we might get something out of that. But Newcastle coming up soon. You'd like to think we'll beat them, like as bad as we are. Leeds encouraged me a bit last night. I mean, I know Leeds are just as bad as us with their injuries, but even I don't think we'd ship 7 to City at the moment. Like, I don't think it's that bad. Like I say, once you get a few results, it becomes harder for or at least easier for the board to defend him. And I think they're just kind of hoping that fans are just to say, well, it looks like this is how it's going to be. We might as well just try and get behind him and try and get behind the team and ensure we don't go down or anything as bad as that. So I think, yeah, like you say, I probably agree. That's probably what the plan is.
Yeah, and you've mentioned a great point, that I think I said it to Cali. He's just got to weather a storm to an extent, and then the games get like there's any easy games for us at the minute, but they do lift up a little bit. We're not playing the top 6 as much. We got like you said, we got Burnley, then we got Newcastle. Brighton, I think, will be a tough one. But we've already got that this season already. And then we've got Norwich, for instance, which again should be a winnable game for us. We do have Villa as well in between the Newcastle game. I'm going to say it now. I can see Villa beating us again, especially now. Especially now, I can really see it happening now. They've already done it once this season, but now that he's in charge, it's 100% written in the stars. And he'll be up for that as well. That'll be his most up for. That and United will be the two games you'll really relish.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, you could also argue maybe you could try and go for a cup run. I mean, we've got Hull away. You'd like to think we'll win that. As bad as it is, you'd like to think we'll get a win there.
I thought that about QPR.
But yeah, it's if you get the stability in the league, and if by the end of January we're looking pretty much set to for it to not go completely bad, a cup run gives the fans something to get behind. So yeah, you're probably right, to be fair. I mean, if you look at it from we have such blue tinted glasses on that, but if you look at it from the wider context, it's not as clear that he needs to go to the board as it is to the fans. So based on that, he's probably here for the long haul.
Yeah, and ultimately it does. I still stick by it. It comes down to a man's ego as well, and I don't think the owner wants to admit that he got this horribly wrong. So he's going to give it as much time as he thinks before he thinks I'm going to really damage myself here. Which is it will go down. Fans won't forget this. That will go down as his sort of in one of his many heritage things that he brought Rafa Benitez to the club. And for all we know, in 2 years we could be saying should have pulled the trigger a lot sooner, and his ego got in the way. Or we could be sitting here going, it was actually it actually worked out not awful. I don't think it'll ever work out well, but we could go, you know what, it's not awful. With there could be worse things that could have happened. I think it's probably going to be more the first one, but you never know.
Yeah, and like we said before, it could be waiting on the right name to come up as well. He might actually have recognised that you can't just like you say, you can't just pull the trigger and just point in whoever the best available person, because managers come and go all the time. There's always new names coming onto the market every week or so. So it might just be a case of waiting it out at the moment as well. It could be Mourinho, you never know. So we'll see.
I was just about to say, I do believe they probably are watching the Roma situation, and if it goes horribly wrong and he was sacked, I have this feeling this Benitez would be about a week after him, and then the next thing it'd be Jose Mourinho at Everton. I think he's waiting out for that next big fish, and I do feel like he's not going to get rid of one thing before he's got another one firmly in place. Especially after this season, this summer's managerial merry-go-round, it was a disaster this summer, complete mess. So he probably looked at that and gone, I just need to hold out a little bit more till something better comes along. Unfortunately, I do think that's going to be Mourinho, or a Mourinho-esque, a big name that will want to come to us. Unfortunately, that means no Potter for me or a couple of the other people that want him, which is tough. But yeah, but I think we'll probably end it here, because I think other than the game, I think we've wrapped everything else as well. We've mentioned the manager stuff. We've mentioned the odds. We've looked through a couple of the favourites. Obviously, you gave us your score prediction as well. I'm probably going to agree with you for that as well. I just want to say thank you for coming on, Alex, and speaking to me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great, mate. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thank you for everyone commenting as well. We've really enjoyed chatting with you. Don't forget to like the like button on the stream. It really, we really appreciate it. It helps out the channel. For those who are watching on YouTube, you can also do the same. Subscribe to the channel and comment down below your score predictions for the Chelsea game. And don't forget, if you want any of your Everton merchandise, there's a link in the description on YouTube that takes you to the store. If you do it through the link, it helps the channel out. There's also a link to buy some Everton merchandise like Toffee Blues Yeri Mina jumpers. And hopefully he's still here past January. And we've teamed up with Score Retro, so go check them out as well for all great retro kits. Alex is sporting a retro kit there. There'll be plenty like that on there, so go check that out and stay safe.